Notre Dame has officially wrapped up preseason camp, and now all eyes turn to the season opener against Miami. Coming up, Pete Sampson from The Athletic joins me to preview the upcoming season and break down why Notre Dame has what it takes to make another run at the national championship.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome in. This is Locked On Irish, your daily Notre Dame podcast. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I'm the host. I graduated from Notre Dame in 2018. Now I'm a producer at Fox Sports and have been covering the Irish for the past 5 years. I am thrilled to have you here with me on Tuesday, August 19th. And thanks for getting your day started right here by making this your first watch or listen of the day. Quick reminder to subscribe to the channel if you're watching along on YouTube, or if you're listening to the podcast, please follow on your preferred platform. I am so excited about today's show. Training camp is officially in the books, and Notre Dame season opener against Miami is just 12 days away. We are so close to real live football, and I am fired up to be joined by Pete Sampson from The Athletic to preview the upcoming season and break down all the biggest storylines, from the quarterback competition and new captains to breakout players, swing games, and why we both believe the Irish have what it takes to make another deep run in the college football playoff. We covered a lot, so let's get right into it. Here's Pete. All right, I'm excited to welcome back Pete Sampson from The Athletic to the show. And Pete, there's so much I want to get to, but I want to start with a big picture question. You've covered a lot of different Notre Dame teams over the past 2 decades plus. How would you compare the excitement level from the fan base around this season to others that you've seen up close?
I mean, I feel like it's kind of similar to last year, where you knew they were going to be good. This feels like maybe a potentially higher ceiling team than last year, which is like kind of ridiculous to say since they played for the national title. But I do think there are parts of this team that could build on what they were last year. I think there are also parts of this team that could maybe undo some of that too. But it feels, 2006, I think, was a team everyone knew was going to be really good. They were just, I don't think they were ever great, but they were good. That would be disappointing this year. But there haven't been, last year was definitely a team you thought was going to be good in the preseason. They turned out to be really good, even if they got off to a really weird start. But I think this year, last year, the excitement is kind of similar. I just think that the unknowns are different this year than they were last year. So like why the upside is there, why the excitement there might be a little bit different.
Yeah, now they've kind of proven that they can win on the biggest stage, which is something last year where it felt like a projection. You thought if they can get through Texas A&M, they're probably going to make the college football playoff. Then once they're in there, they're going to have a great opportunity to make some serious moves, and they did. Now they have to not only bounce back and try to do that again. I think a lot of fans expect them to try to take that next step forward as soon as this year. But now the training camp is behind us. We are under 2 weeks away from the season opener against Miami. But as of this recording, Notre Dame still has not announced a starting quarterback, and maybe by the time that some people are watching or listening, they will have announced it. But at this point, I think it's fair to say all signs point to Kenny Minchey winning the job over C.J. Carr. From what you've gathered, why do you think Minchey ultimately pulled away?
I think that Minchey's mobility was always a plus, but that was obvious from the get-go. I think that the surprise to me was the difference in care of the ball between Minchey and Carr. I think Minchey just makes fewer mistakes than Carr does. And I think I asked Marcus about this sort of in these words over the weekend, just sometimes the biggest play you can make is the one that you don't. It's when you check it down instead of taking a deep shot. It's the mistake that you avoid can matter as much as the big shot play that you hit down the field. And I think Minchey has just been better with that. They had the Jersey scrimmage over the weekend. I think Carr threw a couple pretty bad interceptions in the red zone. I think freshman Mark Zachary got both of them. So I think interceptions have been a problem for Carr. And frankly, it's just not something I saw coming at all. So I think Minchey took advantage of that opening, and full credit to him for doing so. I at this point, I would be surprised if he was not Notre Dame's quarterback at Miami.
Right, and you and I were in the same boat this offseason. We both expected CJ Carr to ultimately win the job, and I think it's fair to say he was considered the heavy favorite by the local and the national media. I always felt like it would be a real competition, but based on what I had seen from Carr and what we had all kind of heard from people we trust, he felt like the favorite. But now that things have unfolded the way they have, and it looks like Kenny Minchey is going to win, I've been asking myself, like, where did I get this wrong? When we look back, maybe it shouldn't be a surprise because Kenny Minchey wasn't as highly recruited as Carr, but he was a top 200 prospect coming out of high school. He played really well in the last 2 spring games. Plus, like you said, brings that added dimension as a runner. He also has that extra year of eligibility while Carr basically missed all of last fall while he was recovering from that elbow injury. So this is just a long-winded way of me asking you, when you look back at this competition, dating back to the very beginning of this offseason, what do you think we all missed?
It's a great question because I thought CJ Carr was inevitable. It's sure thing, maybe not, but like close to it. And the fact that it hasn't worked out this way, honestly, this is like one of the bigger surprise training camp developments I can remember in my time on the beat over 20 years. So I think what did we miss with Carr? Did we miss that he presses too much, that he trusts his arm too much? I mean, I remember talking to Ian Book a month ago about Carr, and like said, the one thing, this is pre-camp, the one thing he's really gonna have to learn is like, don't try to make shot plays all the time. Like he really is aggressive with what he thinks he can do with his arm. And like I said earlier, I think sometimes the play that you make is the mistake that you avoid. And I don't know if I thought Carr would figure that out faster than maybe he has. Like all the arm talent and, draft stuff that you see from Carr, like it's all there. Like that's still happening. Like the throws he can make are really unique. I just think that the mental game and sort of seeing things process about where the ball needs to go and like what chances you can take and what chances you can't. Like, I guess I thought maybe he would be farther along in that, but even that, I think it's hard to imagine. I mean, you think of what we saw CJ Carr in 4 open practices before training camp, 2 spring games, 2 jersey scrimmages. He was by far the best quarterback in 3 of them. The other one was probably a push. And then you watch the first practice of camp and he throws 3 picks. You're like, what is this about? And so maybe that was just a red flag on day one that people wanted to dismiss because it was CJ Carr. But I think just the inability to process what he was seeing in front of him and where to put the ball and when to put it there, I think was just something I thought they would be farther along than he turned out to be.
I can't help but wonder how much that first practice affected his mindset for the rest of camp, especially considering everyone in the media was allowed to attend. All of that stuff was being reported, and maybe he just felt like he needed to press the rest of camp. But if he's pressing like that after one practice viewing where the media is there, imagine what could happen on the road against Miami in a very hostile environment in the season opener. But assuming Kenny Minchey is named the starter, does that change your expectations for the season compared to if Carr had been named the starter?
It really doesn't. Whoever was going to win this job, first career start on the road, hostile environment, like they're going to have to manage that game, not win that game. If Notre Dame asks Minchey or Carr to beat Miami, like that's not happening. I think it'd be just a foolish way to approach it. There's so much talent spread across this roster at other positions. So it really doesn't change my expectations for the opener. It doesn't change my expectations for the season. Could it change expectations for 2026? Maybe. But, we'll get to 2026 later. I think, for this season, Notre Dame, it's a wash in terms of how good they can be based on whether it's Minchey or it's Carr.
How do you expect Marcus Freeman and the staff to handle CJ Carr moving forward this season? We're not looking beyond this year because I know that, if and when Kenny Minchey is named the starter, everyone is going to say, oh, well, CJ Carr is definitely going to transfer. Like, how about we get through a couple weeks first before we get to that? But still, you need CJ Carr to be bought in throughout the season because there's a good chance he is going to be called upon at some point. So how do you think they're going to handle that?
Another good question. I don't know. Carr is like kind of a unique cat. Like you've got you remember his injury last year? It was all like very cloak and dagger. And then, like it felt like it was awkward the way that Notre Dame was dealing with it.
It was awkward.
then training, like you talked to him at the bowl game. He's like, yeah, I don't remember the injury at all or how it happened. I'm like, all right. Training camp opens, the 3 picks. He's kind of on the defensive immediately a day later, talking about, false narratives. And I'm just like, this is strange, man. Like we shouldn't be talking about narratives before your first start. And it just, I don't know. It just felt like he was too aware of what was going on outside. And so, yeah, if you're Marcus Freeman and you tell him, yeah, we're going with Kenny Minchey, that may be a challenge. I think CJ Carr's leadership talent is very high end. Notre Dame will need that even if he's not playing. So, I mean, Marcus Freeman talks about like one of the parts of the culture here that's so good is like people will put Notre Dame before themselves. But man, that is difficult to do with the quarterback position. Steve Angeli did it last year to his credit, and he was rewarded for it. But I think it's much tougher to do if you're in CJ Carr's position. So it's tough. But this will be a very difficult conversation for Marcus Freeman to have with Carr if he's going to go with Minchey.
Yep, but that's why he's paid several millions of dollars every single year. But sort of the prevailing theme throughout camp has been the defense is ahead of the offense, which makes sense. They're trying to figure out who their starting quarterback is going to be, even though they're going into year 2 under Mike Denbrock, still figuring out some new pieces on the outside. Like they bring in Malachi Fields, they bring in Will Pauling, players that they're really excited about. They're still new. But when you think about how far ahead the defense is compared to the offense, they just won the Jersey scrimmage. Like how much of that has to do with just them trying to figure out who the quarterback is going to be, or maybe just looking at the offense as a whole? Do you think that the rest of the group is behind, or is that mostly predicated to the quarterback?
I think they're connected because the quarterback is in charge of getting everybody lined up, snap counts, getting the play in, running the play. I was told in the Jersey scrimmage they did sort of some 2-minute at the end where you get the ball, I think, 35, 40-yard line, minute and a half on the clock, no timeouts. You come out, what happens? Emil Wagner false starts on back-to-back plays to start it. Like that's not – Emil Wagner is a way better player than that. But if you're not sure how the quarterback is bringing the play in, the snap count, I just think that there's more to sort of put together on offense than there is on defense, even though there's a new coordinator over there. So does the offense have some stuff to figure out? Absolutely. But I do think so much of that comes back to the quarterback and that guy having the world on his shoulders, and maybe some things sort of get lost in translation where you weren't worrying about that with Riley Leonard or Sam Hartman before him.
Pete is going to be right back here with us in a moment to tell us who he believes is going to have a breakout season for the Irish. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about PrizePicks, the daily fantasy platform that lets you turn your football predictions into real rewards. Preseason is already heating up and college football is not far behind. Whether you've got your eye on big-name quarterbacks or breakout running backs, PrizePicks makes it easy to get in the game. PrizePicks is a personal favorite of mine because I can play it out here in California, and I just have so much fun with it. I've used PrizePicks for a few seasons now, and I just love how simple it is. I can get a lineup in before my coffee finishes brewing. It's simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in and win up to 2,000 times your money. The flex play option is a total game changer. Even when one of your picks misses, you still doubled your money. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's episode is also sponsored by DripDrop. If you're trying to stay on top of your routine, whether that's workouts, long days on campus, or staying focused through back-to-back classes, hydration is where it all starts. And that's where DripDrop comes in. DripDrop is doctor-developed and scientifically proven for fast hydration. It uses the perfect balance of sodium electrolytes and glucose to help your body absorb fluids quickly, delivering 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of a leading sports drink. I have tried a lot of electrolyte powders, but nothing tastes as good or works as fast as DripDrop. DripDrop has become my go-to, especially during long summer days or when I just wake up feeling dehydrated. I think it's also great to have before or after a workout. Maybe you even try both. That way you can push yourself while staying hydrated. Right now, DripDrop is offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first order. Just head to DripDrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. That's DripDrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Outside of the quarterback battle, what has been the most important development out of Notre Dame's preseason camp?
I think that Eli Raridon is as good now as he was when camp opened, as he was when spring ended, as we saw him in person go full speed, during some open spring practices. I think that is the biggest development on the offense outside of quarterbacks, because if you add an NFL tight end to that room, in the mold of Mitchell Evans or Tyler Eifert or, that dozen other guys that they've had, that changes the offense entirely. For Minchey, for Carr, it really doesn't matter. For Jeremiyah Love, that opens so many things up. And I really think that Raridon is going to have one of those sort of senior seasons that everything comes together. It's rare. Usually by the senior year, who you are is who you are. But I do think Raridon is ready to have kind of one of those senior years where he goes from somebody that had a ton of potential that Notre Dame fans knew about to nationally, you're like, is this kind of one of the best tight ends in the country? I think he's got a chance to be that good.
As someone who has been leading the charge for the Eli Raridon breakout season, are you concerned that the bandwagon is getting too crowded in August?
Yeah, it's getting tight. Probably should have upgraded to a bigger passenger van on this one, but I think that it's going to be probably after A&M totally full. So if you want to get a ticket on the Eli Raridon bandwagon, I suggest you act now.
It's crazy to think about it, but when you look at the entire Notre Dame roster, he might be one of the top 3 or 4 players that they just simply cannot afford to lose this season, partially because the expectations for him are so high, but also the depth behind him is a real concern at tight end. Now we hear that in addition to Kevin Bauman being out for the entire season, Ty Washington is dealing with a wrist injury as well. But what are realistic expectations for Raridon in this breakout season? Are you thinking Cole Kmet 2019, or are we going all the way up to Tyler Eifert the year that he won the Mackey Award?
Probably not, Eifert levels, but I mean, if you can get Kmet 2019 where he can be a guy you lean on when the matchups are right, I think that would be ideal. But it's you think back at Cole Kmet 2019, the lead running back was Tony Jones, right? Now it's Jeremiyah Love. I don't know who those receivers were. I guess you had Chase Claypool, but then it was Lawrence Keys, maybe. I mean, it was not.
It was actually.
God bless Chris Fink. Just the depth or the skill at the receiver and tight end and running back positions at the top of the depth chart is so much better now than it was then. That, I mean, I don't know how you're going to take away Eli Raridon when it's Fields, Pauling, Greathouse, Faison, Love, Price. That's tough. So I think that's one of the reasons why Raridon can have a breakout season is because he's going to have favorable matchups pretty much all the time. So I'm really interested to sort of see how the best personnel packages play out. And then it's on the quarterback to figure out, okay, where's the best matchup? Because there's always going to be a good one.
I have a feeling that in that first game against Miami, they're going to feed the ball to Raridon, similar to how they fed Cole Kmet the ball against Georgia in 2019. And he had missed, I think, the first 2 games of that season because he hurt his collarbone in camp. And I've got the box score pulled up right now. He led the team in receiving 9 catches, 108 yards, a touchdown. Chase Claypool right behind him, 6 catches, 66 yards, and a touchdown. And at number 3, Lawrence Keys, 3 receptions, 35 yards.
Lawrence Keys was not getting any game time on the 2025 Irish squad.
I don't think so. Another bit of news from this week. Notre Dame announced 6 captains on Monday. Adon Schuler, Drake Bowen, Donovan Heinisch, Will Pauling, Emil Wagner, and Billy Strouth. Some surprises in here for sure. What's your biggest takeaway from the fact that this group of 6 was chosen by the players?
Pauling was a surprise just because it's hard to know how players see transfers who aren't quarterbacks. And Pauling came in, and Mike Brown raved about him. I know Marcus Freeman publicly and privately has raved about Will Pauling. They love sort of the work ethic, and guys see like, all right, this guy's putting in extra. I mean, I've been told like the staff has gone as far to go to Jaden Grayhouse and be like, look, Will Pauling is like coming. So, your reps are not guaranteed here, even though I think Jaden Grayhouse is a great player, but Will Pauling is pushing him and pushing him and pushing him. And I think, the fact that Will Pauling stood up and said, I want to be a captain. I know he was a captain at Wisconsin, so this isn't totally new for him. But the fact that he did that at a new place, and then the players voted for him. I don't know if he was first or sixth on that list, but that says a lot about sort of the way he goes about his business. So that was a surprise. I think everybody else was sort of as expected. Like Ashton Craig maybe could have been one. I know people have been like, how could Jeremiyah Love not be a captain? I'm actually writing about this for next week. His personality is one that he's like, that ain't me. I asked him about putting himself up to be a captain about a week and a half ago in a one-on-one, and he's just like, I looked at our captains last year, and it's like, that's not who I am. Like, this is not the way I behave. Like, he didn't want to do that because he knows his personality is not suited for it. So as good as Jeremiyah Love is, like, he's got to be the best player in Notre Dame history never to be a captain, or at least in the modern era. That I think is still pretty interesting, even though there are some like kind of particular reasons for it, that are specific to Jeremiyah Love.
When you say it's not really his personality, do you just mean in the sense that he's not like a rah-rah team leader in that respect, where he like needs to give like pregame speeches where he kind of just lets his play do the talking?
It's that and more, though. Like, he doesn't do that. He's not a rah-rah guy. He wasn't a captain in high school. Like, imagine having a top 100 player on your roster nationally, and you're like, yeah, you're not a captain. But he's cool. He's fine with it. Like, he keeps to himself. I think Aeneas Williams put it to me like, because I was asking him about getting to know Love, and he's like, he's not going to talk to you. You got to talk to him first. Like, that's like, we think of captains as like Riley Leonard, right? Who like, gives a big speech, or, Xavier Watts, Ben Morrison. Like, the guys last year all seemed like quintessential captains. Like, Jeremiyah Love was just like, he didn't see himself that way. He's almost painfully introverted, which is kind of unique to me because he plays such a look at me position, but his personality is not wired that way. So I think you put those things together. I think Love wrestled with the idea, like, do I push myself out of my comfort zone and try to become a captain? And like, ultimately kind of opted to, what, I know who I am. I know what I can do for this team. I'm best. The best way to use me is hand me the ball, not ask me to, give a locker room speech before the Miami game.
Yeah, captain or not, I don't think it's going to affect his play at all. And you've covered a lot of talented players to wear the blue and gold, but if Jeremiyah Love stays healthy, he plays out the full season, and he plays like the player we expect him to be, like, where do you think he could fall or end up in terms of some of the best players that you've seen at Notre Dame?
I mean, I think that this, I know people look at the Heisman Trophy. I think getting to New York would be amazing. That would be, whether you won it or not, that would be an incredible accomplishment for a Notre Dame running back. Having covered a lot of like Notre Dame USC games from like the aughts when Pete Carroll was running that show, like, Jeremiyah Love reminds me a lot of those running backs. But he's by far the best running back I've covered who, wore the gold helmet. So he is an incredible player to watch. Enjoy it while you can. You got maybe 16 games left of it if things go a certain way. But I'm very interested to sort of see how the staff uses him differently. I know Marty Biaggi talked about kickoff return. I think that will be in play. Mike Denbrock wants to get him the ball in space more, motion him out of the backfield. Can you, create a matchup with a linebacker? Good luck to you, sir. It's like, and if Jeremiyah Love goes to New York, it's not because he had 250 carries and ran for 2,500 yards. I think it's gonna be a highlight Heisman campaign. The big Reggie Bush style plays where it's take a swing pass 65 yards, you return kickoff 99 yards. he already has like the hurdles on tape as a running back. So I think it's going to be a highlight heavy year for Love, and they're going to find out much better ways to get him the ball in advantageous positions than, maybe what they did last year.
I posed this question to our friend Tim Murray, and I'm interested to hear how you feel about this. If I set the over at 40%, okay, for Love's total touches this season coming against Miami, Texas A&M, and USC combined, okay? And for context here, last season he had 191 total touches between carries and receptions. So 40% would be around 76. Do you think that he could eclipse that mark in those 3 games? Like, do you think they're going to just front load him at the beginning and then rest him? Or do you think they're going to try to keep it as balanced as they can throughout the season?
I think probably more front load and rest. It's like if you can get 25 touches per game in those 3 games, awesome. Against Purdue, you should have 10 touches. That's fine. I talked to Jaywan Sider a little bit about that, and I asked him, like, Heisman Trophy in 2025 for a running back, can that happen? He's like, it's like it's a quarterback game now, but if you get the highlights, the big plays, you can really ride a guy in some games, Miami, A&M, USC, but then you got to back off in others. So they're already thinking about like how those touches get distributed. Like, I don't need to see Jeremiyah Love returning kickoffs against NC State. But I would love to see him back there to take the opening kickoff back in Miami. So, yeah, I think the staff looks at it that way in terms of like, we got a finite number of touches here. Let's divide them up in the most advantageous way. And I think, 25 a game per those 3, that would be a smart way to do it.
When you look at this team as a whole, what are you most confident will be a strength for Notre Dame this season?
I'm torn between Jeremiyah Love as a singular strength and the secondary. I think the secondary is ridiculous. It is bizarre to think that they would be better without Benjamin Morrison and 2-time All-American Xavier Watts, but I think that they might be better. And I think Devontae Smith is probably an upgrade to Jordan Clark. Leonard Moore and Christian Gray are an upgrade over themselves from last year when they didn't have as much experience. I think Don Schuler and Luke Talich will come out first at the safety position, but Jalen Stroman is talented. I think Tate Johnson, is he going to give you a lot in September? Probably not. Could he give you something really special in December and January? Maybe. So I think that the secondary is just ridiculous, and they've got mix and match ability back there. My concern about the secondary is, like, I don't think they're deep at corner at all. If they lose Gray or Moore at all, they may have a problem there. But if you stick out your first 5 guys in the secondary and then you can rotate at safety, I think that is a elite group nationally.
So on the flip side of that, what gives you the most concern?
I mean, other than quarterback, what they've got at defensive tackle, and it's been interesting talking to people around the program, because before camp, that was one of their big concerns. I think Jason Onye may have had, I don't know if it was a quietly great training camp, because like Freeman and Chris Ash called him out over the weekend as like really stepping forward. But I do think that Onye could be a disruptive force on the interior. And if they can just get a little bit of that from him, Heinisch, and Rubio, those are the top 3 guys, just a little bit there, I think then the edge rushers can kind of go nuts on the outside. So I'm concerned about the run game up the middle. Could they get gashed? It's a good year not to play Ashton Genty at Boise State. That's a concern for me. And then I don't think they feel good about where they are at kicker right now. What Noah Burnett is or isn't, I'm not really sure. But I think there may be sort of a grab bag nature to the kicking game, at least early in the season. So that's a little bit of concern for me too.
I share a lot of those same concerns, because statistically, Notre Dame wasn't great at stopping the run last season. Now, granted, they did play 2 option teams, so that's going to hurt their stats. And even though they dominated Army and Navy in those games, but teams were able to run the ball on them at times. That's why Northern Illinois, or at least a big reason why they were able to upset Notre Dame, is because they were able to run the ball effectively. So that's something that I'm definitely looking out for, and the kicking game. It is None of the reports have been positive. When you're just excited to hear that Noah Burnett made a 50-yarder, that you're probably not in a great spot. So do you think Eric Schmidt could get some time kicking field goals this year?
I do. I think it's Marcello Diamidi might even get some time. Like I know before camp started, I heard that like he had the best leg, not accuracy wise, but distance on the team. So that's why I say like I could see them trying a bunch of different kickers this fall. You know,
that sounds like it'll work just fine.
Yeah, right. It's no problem.
Just cycle them out there.
Just see what happens. But maybe they have a short field goal guy and then a guy that is more your swing for the fences, and they have a different guy in kickoff. Like, I think the kicking game might be more of an all hands on deck operation than maybe even Marty Biaggi would want. But that's definitely something to track as the season gets here.
Pete and I still have a lot more to get to, including his official season prediction for the Irish. But first, a message from a new sponsor, OpenPhone. If you're running a business, every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you needed a service. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need OpenPhone, so you never miss an opportunity to connect with your customers. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system designed to streamline and scale your customer communications. Do you juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate? OpenPhone solved that instantly. Your whole team could share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more, who's handling this? And the AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads, so I never miss a customer again. See why over 60,000 businesses trust OpenPhone. They are offering Locked On listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedoncollege. That's OpenPhone.com/lockedoncollege. They'll even port over your existing numbers for free. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. What have been your impressions of Chris Ash since he took over? Because, at the beginning, he's saying he's doing all the right things, but I think it's been made pretty clear that in camp, he's been able to put his own stamp on the defense. And like we've already talked about, they've been in control of the offense throughout camp. They did bring back a ton of returning production. But what's the sense you get about Chris Ash, what he's been able to do so far?
I think he's got a real hard edge to him. We haven't seen a ton of practice clips or, the 5-period, 4-period observation views that we get. But like he has been intense, maybe even more so than Al Golden has been out, from what I remember of him. I think Ash has been real smart about like, look, I've got a great staff here. They know this roster forwards and backwards. So I'm going to lean into them to, help me figure this all out. The adding zone defenses has been kind of a talking point, and I think that has a place. I think that's as much a reaction to like, okay, at the end of the road when you play Ohio State, like maybe you don't want to play as much man-to-man. That doesn't have a whole lot to do with maybe how you defend Boise State or Pittsburgh, but the ability to sort of build a defense that doesn't just like run roughshod over the teams you should beat, but can step up in some huge moments where you maybe have to have more variety. Like, I'll be interested to sort of see how that plays out. But look, when you get up there and say like, this might be the defense, the deepest defense that I've coached since I was at Ohio State in 2014 when they won the national championship, like people's ears perk up. So I think Ash has done and will continue to do a really good job of like, I've got a ton of material and a ton of expertise on my staff. How do I just knit this thing together in the most productive way? And ultimately, I think that's kind of what he's been doing.
I don't know how it's going to work out with Chris Ash, but I think it's safe to say it is the most intriguing hire that Marcus Freeman has made since he became the head coach at Notre Dame, when you consider the importance of the position as the defensive coordinator and the fact that he wasn't really on anyone's radar, but it is someone who Marcus Freeman sought out. We'll see how it goes. But as it pertains to Freeman, I don't know if he could even have a higher approval rating. I guess if he wins a national championship, that'll probably get it to 100. But when you look at him entering his 4th season as the head coach, what will you be watching most closely to gauge whether he's taken another step forward as head coach?
Well, I think like he really did a nice job last season of like, okay, what's the pulse of this team? What levers do I need to pull? Buttons I need to push? I need to go for it on 4th down more. I need to run a bunch of fakes. I need to play a lot of man defense so we can be aggressive up front. Those were the things that really fed last year's squad. I don't know what's going to feed this year's squad. How do you manage quarterbacks that might not always have a handle on what's happening? How do you get, the defense to take another step forward where it's built more from the outside in than the inside out? I don't know what the answers to those questions are. I don't know if Marcus Freeman knows what the answers to those questions are. Did it become obvious after Miami? If you win, if you lose, do they become obvious after A&M? I don't know. So I think it's like, how does he get the pulse of this team right? That's probably what I'm going to be watching the most. And I think that probably over the next 2 weeks, he's going to have to try to figure that out. And even then, it may be a revelation or two once the bullets start flying at Miami or A&M, that then only then does he really know what he has and what he needs to do to kind of push this team forward.
The thing that I'm going to be monitoring extra closely is how is the team getting up for the game against Purdue and the game against NC State, games that they should go out there and dominate, but that has been an issue every single season under Marcus Freeman. Like every year, they have had at least one game where they just laid a dud. And even though it was great, the way that they responded to the loss to Northern Illinois last year, it would have been better if they just didn't lose to Northern Illinois. That probably would have been better for everyone. And last year, it felt like so much of the season felt dependent on the opener against A&M. That obviously went out the window after the loss to Northern Illinois, but it does feel like there is a similar amount of pressure on the Miami game this year. Do you get that sense? Like, how much of the season's success do you think revolves around that opening game? And honestly, for the sake of this discussion, we could say the first two games against Miami and Texas A&M.
Yeah, because I think if you limited it to just Miami, I'm not saying that Notre Dame has like a free roll down there, but I think there was way more pressure on the A&M game for Notre Dame than there is on Miami. Because if you lost A&M, then it's like, oh, crap, you got to win 11 in a row. I think you can lose to Miami. You got to beat A&M, 2 weeks later. But the way this schedule is set up, I think that if they go 10-2, they'll be fine. So I don't look at the Miami game as like a real make or break moment. I think that also was like, it was on the road, SEC. They hadn't won a big opening night game in a while. So I think that the pressure of that from the fan base sort of is like mitigated a little bit. But I think as long as they're 1-1, they're good. Like, you'll move forward with that. If they're 2-0, awesome. If they're 0-2, they got problems. But I think that's the fact that you have A&M so soon after Miami, it gives you an opportunity to sort of like get the thing going again if you need to. So that's where I feel like the Miami game doesn't have as much pressure on it as A&M did last year.
Something that I've talked about a lot is kind of the roller coaster that was last season. Like, it starts off great against A&M, then it hits an all-time low, and throughout the rest of September, it's not like that was a whole lot of fun. I mean, they pummeled Purdue. That was weird. I can't remember a fan base being so down on a team after they won a game by 59 points, but that's just kind of how it felt at the time. Miami, Ohio was just a painful game to watch. And even Louisville was like, it was a win over a ranked team, and I walked away from that game thinking, what the hell was that? They didn't really feel like a legitimate team until they pummeled Navy in October. So when you look at this year's schedule, obviously it's pretty front-loaded, not just with Miami and A&M. You got Arkansas, Boise State as well. But at what point in the season does Notre Dame kind of have to have all their ducks in a row if they're going to make any sort of run, not only at the college football playoff, but beyond that?
I think USC. I mean, that's to me the game where it's got to come together. You got to look good doing it. If let's say you start 1-1 and then you get out of Arkansas alive and maybe you like sleepwalk through Boise State and NC State, like Purdue's in there, like you should be able to sleepwalk through that one, no problem. But I think USC is where like, I don't want to say like style points matter, but like that's got to be a statement type of game for like multiple reasons. But from a playoff point of view, you want to come out of that and be like, damn, like Notre Dame just won 38-7. Like they should take USC to the woodshed if Notre Dame is on. And like Marcus has done a really good job of getting up for big games. That will be a big game. And then I think from there, you take that and be like, all right, that's the standard you want to play at the rest of the season. And maybe you get on like a November, December, January roll again like you did last year.
Last question I have for you, pretty open-ended. How do you think the season's going to play out?
I think they'll go 1-1. I don't know which one will be the win and which one will be the loss. And I think they will trip up somewhere along the way too. So, kind of a 10-2 season, but how they look in November, the sport has changed so much where like, I hate like the regular season diminishment type of conversation, but like if they're peaking in November and they crush Pittsburgh, BC, Syracuse, Stanford, and they're hot going into the playoffs, like, and they're healthy, like, I think this team is like built to make another run. So I think that they are a college football playoff team for sure, and probably a college football playoff team that's like capable of making another run. Pete Bavacqua would say like you got to be lucky along the way. That's true. You got to have that strip sack right before halftime and the kickoff return touchdown. You got to have Drew Allard do whatever he was doing and then take advantage of it if you're Christian Gray and kick the game-winning field goal. But I think Notre Dame's at the head table of the sport now. Like they are a contender to do the whole thing this year. And it would be really disappointing if they didn't make an honest run at it in December and January. So I feel like they're a playoff team with a chance to go one farther than they did last year, which obviously is saying a lot.
It's a great note to end on. You can read all of Pete's work on The Athletic, or you can listen to his podcast, The Independent, with another friend of the program, Matt Fortuna. Pete, thank you so much for taking the time. I'm looking forward to reading your coverage throughout the season. Safe travels to Miami in a couple weeks, and hopefully I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Tyler.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Irish. Thanks again for making this your first watch or listen of the day. If you enjoyed my conversation with Pete, please subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you're listening to the podcast. Always love having Pete on, and we have more special guests coming your way. Also, remember to leave a like, rate, or review. It really helps more Notre Dame fans find the show. I'm going to be right back here with you on Wednesday morning, and by then, we might even know who Notre Dame's starting quarterback will be. Wouldn't that be something? But regardless of whether or not there's an announcement, I'm going to be right back here tomorrow, same time, same place. I'll see you then.